The stage was empty, yet laughter still echoed from somewhere unseen. Under the soft gold light of a BBC studio, a young man once stood, his smile bright enough to make Britain forget its troubles. Richard Beckinsale didn't need to act. His warmth was real, effortless, and disarming. Every grin felt like sunlight breaking through the English grey. But one morning, the laughter stopped. No one expected it. The country woke to silence, the kind that doesn't just fill a room but stays in your chest. The man who made millions laugh had slipped away quietly, leaving behind unfinished scripts, broken hearts, and a question that never faded. How could life dim a light so soon after it began to shine? He was the face of joy in an era of struggle. And yet, behind that easy charm, something fragile was quietly breaking. This is the story of Richard Beckinsale, the rising star who never got to shine. In the 1970 seconds, British television was entering its golden age when laughter was medicine, and sitcoms were the heartbeat of living rooms across the nation. At the center of it all stood Richard Beckinsale, young, charming, and impossibly natural. He was the kind of actor who made the audience believe they knew him personally. His roles in Porridge and Rising Damp turned him into a household name, and critics called him the face of the new British comedy. I'm redder. What to enrowd. Born in Nottingham in 1947, Richard's rise was quiet but certain. His voice, soft, unhurried, filled with kindness, made him the soul of every scene. When he appeared on screen, you felt safe, as though the world outside had paused for a moment of laughter. But behind the cameras, the schedule was merciless. He was filming one show while rehearsing for another, pushing through exhaustion that no one around him could see. To his fans, he was unstoppable. To his friends, irreplaceable. Yet to himself, perhaps, he was just tired. He once told a colleague, half-jokingly, "I can't remember what a day off feels like." No one realized how close that line was to a prophecy. Behind the laughter, a story that fame could never protect. Nottingham, late 1950 seconds. A boy with an unassuming smile sat in the back row of the local cinema, memorizing every line, every gesture, every flicker of light that fell across the actors' faces. That boy was Richard Beckinsale, quiet, thoughtful, and already studying the art of being human. He wasn't born into privilege. His father was a fitter, his mother a homemaker. Acting was not a path that people like him were expected to walk. Yet Richard saw something sacred in performance, a way to make others feel less alone. After studying at Clarendon College, he enrolled in the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, where his professors quickly realized he possessed a kind of truth that couldn't be taught. By 1970, television noticed. His breakout role in The Lovers introduced Britain to a new kind of leading man, gentle, genuine, boyish, yet deeply relatable. He wasn't performing, he was simply being. And in an age of cynical comedy, that honesty felt revolutionary. Soon came Porridge, where his portrayal of the naive but good-hearted Lenny Godber made him a national treasure. He wasn't just funny, he was human. The laughter that followed him everywhere wasn't the roar of fame, it was affection. For Richard Beckinsale, the spotlight didn't blind him, it warmed him, at least, at first. Success came faster than anyone expected. By the mid-1970 seconds, Richard Beckinsale was on nearly every British screen, starring in Porridge, Rising Damp, and rehearsing for Going Straight. The laughter he created became a kind of national comfort. But comfort for others often meant chaos for him. His schedule was relentless. Studio mornings bled into late-night rehearsals, days blurred into weeks. Colleagues recalled that he never complained, just smiled, learned his lines, and went back under the lights. He was the kind of man who didn't know how to say no. To fans, he was tireless. To himself, he was quietly fading. Friends later remembered him rubbing his chest between takes, joking that he was getting old before 30. In truth, exhaustion was tightening its grip. The demands of fame left no room for rest, no silence to hear his body's quiet warnings. Yet he hid it well because, for Richard, laughter was duty, and duty was love. Off camera, he tried to balance a young family with the pace of a man twice his age. Letters and interviews hinted at a longing for stillness, a walk by the sea, a day without a call sheet. But still, He kept showing up giving everything, because that's what stars were supposed to do. And sometimes, giving everything means giving too much. March 1979. The air in London still carried the faint chill of winter. On set, Richard was his usual self, light, warm, cracking jokes between scenes. Nothing in his voice or smile betrayed what was coming. He was just 31, with scripts waiting on his desk and laughter still waiting to be filmed. That night, he went home and never woke up. A sudden heart failure, they said. No warnings, no history, no signs, just silence. The kind that makes time stop. When the news broke, the BBC studio froze. His co-star Ronnie Barker wept openly, a rare sight for a man known for laughter. Productions halted. Across Britain, people stared at their televisions in disbelief. The young man who had filled their homes with joy had vanished overnight, leaving the country hollow with confusion. Friends later revealed that he'd been feeling unwell for weeks, but refused to stop working. He'd joked about seeing a doctor when this series is done. That day never came. It wasn't a fall in scandal or shame. It was something quieter, crueler the body, surrendering where the soul refused to. His story didn't collapse in public. It simply faded between takes, like the last echo of a laugh before the lights go out. He gave everything to make others smile and in doing so, left nothing for himself. The morning after Richard Beckinsale's passing, Britain woke to headlines that felt impossible to believe. Newspapers printed his smiling face beside words that made no sense together, dead and 31. At the BBC, crews stood in silence. Laughter tracks had never sounded so haunting. His funeral was modest, tender. Family, friends, and fellow actors gathered not as celebrities, but as people who had loved a kind soul. Ronnie Barker spoke softly, saying that Richard never played kindness, he simply was it. In the crowd, a young girl held her mother's hand, Kate Beckinsale, too young to understand, yet old enough to feel that something irreplaceable was gone. In the weeks that followed, the shows paused. Scripts were rewritten, sets dismantled. Going straight meant to be his next big triumph ended before it began. Viewers wrote letters to the BBC, describing how his warmth had changed their lives. Some called him the man who reminded us to smile through hard times. There was no scandal, no farewell tour, no last public goodbye, just an unfinished life and a country in mourning. The curtain fell quietly, as if even death understood that applause would have been too loud. Richard Beckinsale's story ended not with tragedy, but with silence, a silence too pure to disturb. Time has a way of softening pain, but some names never fade. Richard Beckinsale's legacy became more than just a career cut short. It became a reminder of how sincerity can outlast fame. Decades after his passing, reruns of Porridge and Rising Damp still air on British television. Audiences who weren't even born when he lived find themselves laughing with him, not at him because his humor was never cruel, his presence never forced. He embodied the kind of warmth that doesn't age. His daughter, Kate Beckinsale, would grow up to carry the same gentle fire. In interviews, she speaks of a father she barely knew but always felt near through film reels, laughter, and the kindness people still associate with his name. He seemed to belong to everyone, she once said, but I've always felt lucky that he was mine. Among his colleagues, his name is spoken with reverence, not as a star lost too soon, but as a soul who made the world brighter while he was here. When his shows play today, there's a sense of melancholy beneath the laughter, as if the audience knows they're sharing a moment borrowed from the past. And perhaps that's his truest legacy. He never got to shine long, but his light never truly went out. Fame is loud, shadows are silent. Richard Beckinsale lived between the two, adored by millions, yet vanishing before anyone realized how fragile joy could be. His life reminds us that the brightest lights often burn the quickest, and that kindness, more than success, is what lingers when the applause fades. In every episode, every smile he left behind, there's a trace of something eternal, a reminder that laughter can be both medicine and memory. He didn't live long enough to see the legacy he built, but maybe he never needed to. Some souls don't require time to make an impact. They only need truth. The spotlight that once bathed him in gold may have dimmed, but its warmth remains flickering in every rerun. every tear of nostalgia, every moment we remember to laugh through pain. He was the rising star who never got to shine, and yet, somehow, he still does. Which moment do you remember most, his gentle voice, his boyish smile, or the laughter that filled your living room long after the credits rolled? Richard Beckinsale's story may have ended too soon, but his warmth still lives in the echoes of every line he ever spoke. If his story touched you, share it. Tell someone about the star who made Britain smile and still does. Because behind every spotlight, there's a shadow worth remembering.